Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Andrew.
I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Kevin.
And we're here to discuss articles from the Green Page, which you can find at cmuptm.blogspot.com. And our first two articles, we're doing the old merging of articles today. Once again, with the Fascination newsletter. So this is essentially a marketing venue for Cirque.
Yeah.
And there's two articles about workers' comp and injuries sustained on the job with Cirque from this week's postings. The first is called The Perils of Workers' Comp for Injured Cirque du Soleil Performers, which was originally published in the Wall Street Journal by Alexander Berzon and Mark Merrimont. And the second article is called Injuries Put Safety in Spotlight at Cirque du Soleil. Same byline. Alexander Berzon and Mark Merrimont. So obviously we all know that in the past couple of years, Cirque has undergone a lot of scrutiny based on some injuries that have occurred there. One of these articles focuses on Natasha Hallett, who is a performer with Cirque in Las Vegas in 2007, who fell 40 feet or so because of a harness malfunction. Actually, not a malfunction.
It wasn't set up.
It wasn't, yeah. Her partner didn't properly check. Her harness was doubled back.
Yeah.
She fell 40 feet and broke a bunch of bones, 19 bones from the waist down. And her recovery process has been long and slow, and this article is mostly about what happens as sort of like a niche performer, like you're not your typical workers' comp plan,
right,
essentially, and what happens to you as a circus performer entering the sort of landscape of workers' compensation, and how you come back from that.
Yeah. And the fact that it can be very difficult, because she makes the point in this article about, like, if she breaks her leg or breaks many bones in her body, as she did, and she is rehabilitated, the typical route for recovery involves you being able to walk again. And she's like, well, I actually need to be able to use my body for a lot more than that. Like, and there's a lot of nuance that I need to be able to. So she talks about that, and then they also talk about the fact that workers' comp is not. Workers' comp sounds great, and it's better than nothing. But that some of these people are living off of around $20,000 a year, which isn't horrifying, but it's compared to the $150,000 a year that they're making as performers. It's a huge drop, and if you're supporting families and all this stuff, it's like, what are you supposed to do? So it's definitely an imperfect system, and when they talked to Cirque's HR person, he basically said, it's just easier in terms of management to do it this way, and I was like, that just sounds like I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah, and
Stop
from a company that's raking in $85 million a year,
Yeah.
like I don't have much sympathy for them.
And putting people at risk, obviously.
And these performers, like they're the reason the show happens. They're the reason that the show exists,
Yeah.
and like it just seems like the blatant disregard for their bodies and the family, their families, and their well-being after they're injured is kind of disgusting. This woman, Natasha Hallett, like, she shattered 19 bones below her waist in this fall, and she was initially offered $45,000 in compensation. She appealed and got $170,000, but she's one of the lucky ones.
Right.
Like you said, a lot of people are end up, with $20,000 a year and having to supplement their income in other ways, and it's just kind of like, well, you're put out to dry after something like that happens, and it's like, on the one hand, it's like, what are they going to do with injured people? Like, obviously they can't perform their shows, but like it seems like they should be taken care of. Like there should be more protections for their workers.
I completely agree, but we all know that's never going to happen. It's almost like I compare it to the case of the NFL or something, right? So like.
But even NFL, like pro athletes, like they, if they get injured and they have to take time off, they're paid their full salary until their multi-year contract is over.
Right.
These people are just like put out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like they don't get benefits. They don't get support. They're just like, if they're not performing, they're not being paid.
It is true, actually. I wonder if Cirque isn't sort of opening itself up in that case to a string of litigation at some point. So like saying that it was your practices as a business that created the situation for me to be injured, and it is your practices that have caused me to not only incur medical costs, but to lose all sorts of money that I could have been making, and say, you owe me $1 million kind of thing. I'm actually a little bit surprised that it hasn't happened, and I bet part of it, I don't really know what this is, but there's sort of this circus atmosphere that surrounds this group still,
Right.
which I think is part of what lends it its mystique, but also sort of muddies the water of these sorts of discussions when it comes to Cirque, because the circus is all about like the show must go on, and like
A sense of family. And
family, and you would never sue the organization because
Right.
it's this strange circus culture.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if that's gonna last.
I don't know. I mean, and Cirque du Soleil is being put up on auction. It's being
That's right.
sold.
Wait, can I say his
by
name?
Goldman Sachs.
Guy Laliberté, selling his controlling interest.
Very good.
Right. He's
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know. Maybe with new management will come a new concern
Well,
for workers and new protections for workers. I hope so.
And might also come the freedom for circus employees to be like, well, I'm not suing the circus anymore. I'm suing, some international conglomerate of business, interests,
Mhm.
right? So like, no longer is it some taboo to be like, you owe me $1 million because, I got hurt on your show. Now it's just Live Nation or whatever that you're suing.
Right.
So.
I mean, it just, one of the really surprising things to me reading this article was to find out that that OSHA found in 2011, the last year that data was available, that Cirque du Soleil's show Caw in Las Vegas,
The one where somebody died 2 years ago.
Right.
it had that show has a higher rate of injury than all but 78 workplaces on a list of nearly 52,000 of the most dangerous workplaces compiled by OSHA. So like this, I mean, it's an incredibly dangerous environment to work in, and it's also, I mean, it's not like these people are working, like harvesting some kind of like rare like fish or crab that like only lives up in Alaska and that like only certain people can afford to buy. It's like this is like mass.
Farming in Las Vegas.
This is like
Yeah.
mass entertainment, and it's
Yeah.
really problematic that like that Cirque du Soleil is making so much money off of this and still has an incredibly dangerous work environment, and it's really like I think it's really like on consumers.
It's interesting. I wonder if combined your statement and mine that so some corporate entity buys Cirque and it's no longer has this sort of protecting umbrella of the circus culture. It could very well sort of spell the doom for Cirque because if especially since OSHA is probably not going to be as feel as weird about going after some corporate conglomerate as it does, or it's more black and white really. Like you're making people work in a place that isn't safe,
Right.
and in a way that is not safe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see.
Although it's weird to think about that too. I mean, we have really strict rules about like workplace rules about places that are unsafe, except when it comes to stuff that we like and don't want to give up. So like we don't need to go into it like in depth, but I mean you think about like what dangerous places that a lot of meatpacking plants are, and that people don't really want to deal with it because they want cheap meat, right? And it's like, well, I don't really want to think about that. So I wonder. I'd be interested to see where this goes, because is it like consumers will stand up for the rights of these workers?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Or
We're a society that does that.
Or
on a regular basis.
yeah, I mean, are we exactly like? But I think sometimes you can get whipped up. But like I think people can get whipped up though into a frenzy of support. You know what I mean? It's like when you shine a light on things.
Right.
I know you're being like ridiculous, but like you know what I mean? I wonder what'll happen in this case.
Maybe, I don't know. I
Who
mean,
knows?
I feel like there's been a lot of like mass movements in the past few years, like mass like demonstrations and like getting people in the street. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if like those instances that I'm thinking of are mostly like protests against like police brutality. I don't know if like safety for Cirque du Soleil performers is gonna like whip people up into a frenzy to like, you know, go out on the streets and like, demand rights for
Right.
for those people.
Well, I mean, the second article, and we're going to have to gloss over it very quickly because we've spent so much time on the first, but you know, the second article that we talked about specifically sort of even quotes Mr. La Liberté, saying, "We're a family. We don't want to put our kids in danger. We don't sell tickets that way." You know, sort of speaking to this family atmosphere, the protective atmosphere that we have, sort of surrounding this type of performance art. But yeah, once that's gone, once it just becomes another corporation, I'm very interested to see what not only the public feeling is about it, and the performer's feeling is about it, like, you know, working for this corporation rather than a family.
Yeah.
On a somewhat related note, from the UK, we get an article in a blog called Event Industry News, which is an event news blog, called Making Creative Staging Safer with New CDM Regulations. Okay, I know this sounds really boring. It is pretty
It's
boring.
very boring.
But this is an article about the UK's commission of, you know, sort of an industrial safety commission. I guess equivalent to OSHA for us, but maybe with a little more teeth. That is now adopting more construction-based safety regulations for the temporary structures that events commonly set up. So, like, you know, right now in the United States, if you set up a festival with a stage and truss and all that, it's under different regulations than it would be if you were to go to that same site and build it as like a permanent standing building.
Right.
Very different code, very different safety factors, all that stuff is very different. And in the UK, because of a bunch of, you know, accidents in the past forever, they're deciding that that's not the best idea, and they're actually going to hold temporary events to a much more strict set of regulations.
Seems
Yeah.
like a good idea to me. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, on an individual event by event basis, it'll probably be really irritating and expensive for the people setting up. But you think about the number of events that happen. I mean, if you think about somebody who works in the event industry, they'll work on these structures, these like ramshackle structures.
That they
and
may
it's-
have no idea how to set up.
Exactly.
And that's a big part of
And
it
it's,
that
like,
the article
constantly-
points out is training will have to, the expense
Yeah.
of training for the organizations that set this stuff up is going to at least double.
Yeah, and it should. I mean, it's like if you're setting up like lighting rigs and stuff. I mean, outdoors where the winds can pick up.
It's not,
and
it's not a trivial thing.
No, so people could actually die, and they have. So it's like you should know how to do this. And you think about people who work in these environments. They work in them different ones, like most weeks of their lives. Well, then they're always working in unsafe environments.
Right.
You know, that's not okay. It's
And,
not like a one-off.
You know, we've seen what's happened in the States with this sort of thing, like Live Nation, that event production company that does events all across the
That we
South.
talked about.
Yeah.
They hire, you know, unskilled workers to do what really requires highly skilled work and training and safety precautions, and it's just not right. It's
Yeah.
not, and it's not. Yeah, it's not right.
Safe.
I mean,
It's terrible.
most recently, probably the biggest one that stands out in all of our minds is the Indiana State Fair collapse that happened back in 2011 that killed a bunch of 7 people, injured a bunch of others.
I actually didn't know about that.
Well, I mean, we hear about it in our on our side of things because, of course, like those are the types of structures that we might be specifying.
In production.
Yeah, in PTM.
Yeah. There was also the one in Asia or a few months
Well,
ago
that
where
was
somebody fell into a hole.
Through a grading.
Yeah, I mean, which I know isn't exactly the same, but it's like I think
Well,
that,
regulations about not being able to allow people into that space, obviously,
Yeah.
would be part of these types of new, more stringent regulations.
hopefully, yeah, just surveying where these people are going to be,
Right.
or at your event to make sure that's safe.
So,
yeah, it's just annoying because I mean, I'm sure it's annoying for professionals who like do their job really well.
Right.
But you know, like a couple morons like ruin it for everybody. And I'm not saying like the morons are the unskilled people who are at these events.
No,
I'm saying
it's
the morons are the people who
getting paid
are
lots of money to.
who are getting paid lots of money and like cutting corners to
Right.
like make even more money.
Right.
and like putting people at risk. Those are the people who like fuck it up for everybody else.
Totally.
Excuse me, Kevin?
Excuse me, I think we're allowed to curse, and I think this situation warrants cursing.
People like
Agreed.
you, probably.
And
Sorry for cursing.
speaking of cursing,
Kevin's gonna do it again. It's
Uh,
his favorite topic.
finally, an end to the saga, possibly, or a beginning to the new portion of the saga
A
in
new
Los
beginning.
Angeles, a new beginning.
I feel like we need to have like Dan Sakamoto like come in here and like you need to like pass off your laptop to him or something.
Okay. Do you want to work that out?
Well, I mean like right. I mean it'd be great if it
Too
happened right
late,
now, but I
too
think it's
late.
Too late.
Uh,
We didn't plan it.
so, as you know, because you've been following this podcast,
Religiously,
religiously.
I'd say.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. The Actors Equity Association and Los Angeles theater companies have been having this discussion, roustabout, angry fight, I don't know, for the past 6 months or so, about the 99-seat theater plan, which is one of the many contracts that Actors Equity Association extends to theaters in order to hire union actors. Sorry. Equity believes that the 99-cent theater plan, which does include
99 seat.
did I say cents?
You said
Yeah, actually, I think that's the best tagline, 99-cent theater plan. Because in this certain plan, some actors only get paid like $7 a performance or something like that. They get paid very low wages. And actually, they've been trying for months to say we're going to change this plan, we're going to scrap it. You guys are going to have to get used to something new. And surprisingly, a lot of the people whom that contract is meant to protect, the actors themselves, have been speaking out pretty vocally about not changing it. About this is a good plan. We like this plan, even though we don't get paid anything by it.
Yeah.
So anyway, recently, this article is from April 22nd. Equity has released a whole bunch of new plans, basically. This article lists, I think, 7 different types of plans based in the Los Angeles area that kind of are divided up by the number of seats in your theater, the amount of money that you spend on your production, the amount of money you make, that sort of parse out how you have to pay your actors. Although, notably, the Los Angeles 99-seat agreement is still in this list, except that it requires a $9 per hour minimum wage payment to any actor working on that plan. So essentially, Equity has said, okay, we're listening to you, we're going to give you a lot of options, but this particular plan, the 99-seat agreement, that's going minimum wage, deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that the idea behind these giving a bunch of different scenarios that would work for equity, that they say would be fine, is that under the old plan, the fear and reality was that that fostered exploitation in certain situations. And so I think this is equity's attempt to address that and to try to say, okay, well, here are a bunch of things you can do that are fine, that don't seem exploitative, and here the other ones you can't. That's not okay. So I think they're trying to get rid of loopholes and things like that with this, and we'll see if it works.
Well, I mean, they also kept in their original amendment of the plan, so they were going to scrap the whole plan for this Los Angeles membership company rule, which basically said if you've been one of these companies, these 99-seat theater plan companies, that you can keep your current membership and keep the current pay scale. Because those people are deciding to be a part of that community, you can keep that, but only until that company disbands. So they've kept this, and what it doesn't say actually, which I wish it would, is if that means that the company can stay intact no matter what the membership is. So that would make a big difference, I think. I can tell that Kevin is extremely interested in
I'm
this
just
stuff.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's okay, you don't have to.
We've talked about this so many times.
We have
I just
talked about
don't-
this a
I just don't know. I just don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Sorry.
The most compelling thing, okay, I agree, all this contract talk is kind of boring.
Yeah.
However, it is really fascinating that Equity is sort of fighting the people that they're proposing to protect. With
Right.
this
I mean,
rule.
what's interesting about this to me is that unions are in crisis. Unions are in crisis and have been for a really long time, and like they've been systematically destroyed, and you know, and they are, you know, kind of a
Although
like
equity will
liberals are the champions of unions, and actors are often associated with liberal causes. I mean, look at any celebrity actor that speaks up for a political issue. It's almost always, you know, a liberal perspective on a political issue.
Except for Melissa Joan Hart.
Except for Melissa Joan.
Notably Republican.
Oh, okay. So you know, actors are often identified with liberal causes, and here's like a very fundamental like liberal cause, and like actors are actively
fighting against.
on paper they're fighting against their own interests, and it's kind of like what?
Yeah.
So that's what's interesting about this to me, but I mean it is for, you know, their own, you know, in order to kind of make a space for them to, you know, experiment and create and collaborate. So, you know, it's an interesting situation in that way. It's just like the different like contract agreements, like I honestly could care less.
Yeah,
it's just because I'm not an actor, and like I don't plan on trying to be an actor in LA or like working in a 99-seat theater or something. I'm just like, sorry, I don't care.
Well, we'll see where it goes from here. This is just again just a proposal from Equity. Nobody's signed on to it yet, as far as I know. But you know, actors who are actively Equity Association members will have to abide by their rules if they want to continue being represented by Equity. So they are in the driving seat right now. So
well, that's the other confusing thing. Is like why if they don't want the union like telling them where they can and can't work, then why don't they just leave the union?
because the union offers a whole lot of things that they can't get on their own.
This is not the only, this is one small section of what
What Equity provides. And I will say that, like, so you mentioned earlier, and I just want to throw this out as my last comment on this entire podcast ever, because, ladies and gentlemen, this is my last podcast ever. Thank you very much for being so kind and listening to my BS over and over again. But I will say that even though unions are certainly beleaguered in this country, you know, down from almost 35% representation to 11% today. So 1950s, at their very peak, about 35% of American workers were represented by a union. Today, that's 11%. However, in the entertainment industry, 25% of employees are still represented by a union. So in our industry, unions are actually still very, very strong, a very important part of the fabric in which we work. So I'm pro-union all the way. I hope that they can figure this out so that the union membership can get what they want in terms of a place to work and collaborate, as you say, but also, you know, fair compensation for their talent. So, again, thank you very much for joining us. I'm Andrew.
I'm Caitlin.
I'm Kevin.
And with a tearful eye, we sign off for the summer. And these two, I'm sure, will be back next year for more inane commentary for you to imbibe.
You mean enlightening?
Enlightening, sorry, I meant enlightening.
I get those mixed up.
And thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a nice summer, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.